The Cuban Missile Crisis, 13 days to nuclear war. In October 1962, the world came closer to nuclear war than ever before. For 13 tense days, the United States and the Soviet Union stood on the brink of destruction. This is the story of the Cuban Missile Crisis, how the discovery of Soviet missiles in Cuba nearly ended human civilization, and how diplomacy pulled the world back from the edge. Scene 1. The Cold War background. After World War II, the Cold War divided the globe. The United States championed democracy and capitalism, while the Soviet Union pushed communism. By the late 1950s, Cuba, just 90 miles from the U.S. coast, had fallen to Fidel Castro's communist revolution. The failed Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961 left Cuba closer than ever to Moscow, and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev saw an opportunity to place nuclear missiles in Cuba, balancing America's own missiles stationed in Turkey and Italy. Scene 2. Discovery of the missiles. On October 14, 1962, an American U-2 spy plane flew over Cuba. The photographs it captured shocked Washington. Soviet medium-range ballistic missiles, capable of striking most of the United States, were being installed on Cuban soil. President John F. Kennedy was briefed the next morning. The stakes were clear. Within weeks, the Soviets could launch nuclear strikes from America's doorstep. Scene 3. Kennedy's dilemma. Kennedy called together his advisors, the Executive Committee of the National Security Council, or EXCOM. Options were debated: a full invasion of Cuba, airstrikes to destroy the missiles, or a naval blockade. Kennedy feared that an invasion could trigger World War III. Instead, on October 22, he announced to the world that the U.S. would impose a quarantine around Cuba, stopping Soviet ships from delivering further missile components. The world now held its breath. Scene 4. Brink of war. As U.S. Navy ships enforced the blockade, Soviet vessels steamed toward Cuba. For hours, it was uncertain whether the Soviets would stop or force a confrontation. Meanwhile, U-2 flights showed missile sites in Cuba were racing toward completion. The American military went to DEFCON 2, the highest alert short of nuclear war. On October 24, the world waited. Then, Soviet ships carrying missiles turned back, but the crisis wasn't over. Cuba still had operational missiles, and tensions remained razor-sharp. Scene 5. The letters. On October 26, Khrushchev sent a letter to Kennedy offering a deal. The Soviets would withdraw their missiles if the U.S. promised never to invade Cuba. The next day, another harsher letter arrived, demanding that the U.S. also remove its missiles from Turkey. At the same time, an American U-2 was shot down over Cuba, killing the pilot. Military leaders urged Kennedy to retaliate, but he resisted. He knew one wrong move could ignite nuclear war. Scene 6. The deal. Kennedy chose to publicly respond only to Khrushchev's first letter. On October 28, Khrushchev agreed the Soviets would dismantle their missiles in Cuba in exchange for America's pledge not to invade. Privately, Kennedy also promised to remove U.S. missiles from Turkey within months, but this was kept secret to avoid looking weak. The world sighed in relief. Nuclear war had been averted. Scene 7. Legacy. The Cuban Missile Crisis showed how close the superpowers were to total destruction. Both Kennedy and Khrushchev realized the dangers of brinkmanship. In its aftermath, a direct hotline was established between Washington and Moscow, and future arms control agreements began. The 13 days of October 1960 to remain a reminder: diplomacy, restraint, and communication can mean the difference between survival and annihilation. The Cuban Missile Crisis was the most dangerous moment in human history. For 13 days, the fate of the world hung in the balance, and thanks to careful leadership, catastrophe was avoided. Do you think today's leaders could handle such a crisis the same way? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history that shaped our world.